development, there must be a rise in the standards of living of the people. The influence of this, ladies and gentlemen, is that economic growth leads to economic development. Against that background, to put us on the correct anchorage, I want then to advance a correlation between HR and economic development. We need to understand that, first of all, labor is a factor of production. That's where we start from. Labor is a factor of production. And for us to realize economic development, we must witness a rise in the productivity levels. That is the correlation. The implication is that economic development, therefore, becomes a function of the level of productivity. And you cannot have productivity unless you have labor as a factor of what? As a factor of production. I thought it is important to give that background so that when I advance my propositions and arguments, then we will be on the correct premise. How then does HR development is not undertaken in a vacuum, but is guided by certain policy propositions or policy documents. I would use the Kenyan context to advance my arguments. Today, equally, the development agenda of the current administration, the fifth administration, is anchored on the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, development on the other. Planning is imperative, and that is why at global level, continental level, regional, and even national level, we must have HR plans if we are to realize our goals and objectives, so that we have got the right human resource capacity within the economy. Right human resource capacity within the economy. That is a fundamental role of HR. Manpower planning, human resource planning, which is aligned to the overall development framework. Again, within that planning space, as an HR function, you cannot draw an HR plan in a vacuum. You must start by looking back in retrospect to realize the milestones that you have gained in the HR space, the challenges you have faced within the HR function, and what you need to do moving forward to overcome those challenges, the lessons which you have learned, the gaps in HR. You must align HR to what is happening in the operational environment through a pastel policy, legal, environmental, social, technological development policy agenda. Then you may not be able to realize your goals, economic goals and objectives. So leadership as an integral function of HR in economic development. And once you lead the people, to enable you lead the people effectively, you must have a control function. And this ordinarily is what you execute all the time by way of performance management. You cannot manage performance in the economy unless performance management is aligned to the overall planning framework within the economy. So those two are interrelated, if not Siamese twins. The planning function of HR and the performance management function of HR. Again, we have got phrases, terms people use interchangeably as if they mean the same thing, yet they are different. When you talk of performance contracting, people confuse it with performance management. Performance management is an umbrella term that refers to all the control functions that the HR function undertakes with a view to realizing the goals and objectives that we want to attain within the economy. But within that performance management framework, you undertake performance contracting, where you commit people beforehand to attaining certain performance levels, both quantitatively and qualitatively, so that we meet our performance targets within the economy. That is performance contracting. but to correct performance deficiencies so that we are able to meet our national economic goals and development goals by way of between productivity improvement and the level of economic development. And this again is facilitated by HR. So the economic development, ladies and gentlemen. The other one is reward management. Based on performance contracting results, there is need to tie the same to a reward management framework that will give people they need to understand why that change is imperative, what their role will be in the change process, what will be the likely output or impact, the end result of change. If people don't see a linkage between the benefits of change and the change program, you will lose the people, and you will not be able to meet your goals and objectives. And this is a fundamental role of HR within the economy. Effective management of change. And also ensuring that we introduce change in doses. Too much change can also be counterproductive. We must have an optimal level of change. Laws, regulations, labor laws and regulations. That again is another fundamental role of HR, and it is health and safety, tied to the environment again. So I can go on and on, ladies and gentlemen, but the long and short of it is that within the economy. So my conclusion by inference is that there is a direct correlation between the HR